Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of 30 Minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television. I'm Manir Dan Ali. My guest today is the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, who is on the cusp of conducting his second general elections. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much, Manir, and thank you to Trust TV for having me.
How does it feel? I mean, we are seated today on the very day that the election campaign have started. Do you feel a sense of trepidation, or is it fulfillment that again another round of election is about to come?
Well, I feel a sense of responsibility, also a sense of satisfaction. Recall that on the 26th of February this year, the Commission released the timetable and schedule of activities for the 2023 general election. The election will hold in two phases. The first one is what we call the national election, presidential and national assembly, meaning the Senate and the House of Representatives. And this will hold on the 25th of February. And then we have the state election, governorship elections in 28 states, and the state houses of assembly elections. The governorship election is holding in 28 instead of 36 states, because in the other 8 states, the elections are held off-cycle, like the 2 elections we recently conducted in Ekiti and Osun State. Right. So I feel a sense of responsibility, I feel a sense of fulfillment. In that timetable we released early this year, we identified 14 activities between the publication of notice for the election and election day. And today we have fulfilled, successfully accomplished 9 out of the 14 activities.
Because the last time I saw you talking about this, you were mentioning 8, so 1 more has been fulfilled.
1 more has been added today. The law says that the Commission cannot conduct an election earlier than 150 days to the end of tenure.
And this is the first time there's this provision?
No, the provision has been there. It's actually a constitutional provision.
But why does it seem as if this is like the longest period of electioneering-related campaigns before the actual elections?
No, it is actually in reality, because previously parties were required to submit names of candidates to the Commission 60 days to the election. And in fact, you have up to 45 days for withdrawals and substitution. That has created a lot of challenges for the Commission. The responsibilities we discharge keep increasing. For instance, in 2019, we had 84 million registered voters. Our projection for 2023 is 95 million. And so the responsibilities for recruitment and training of ad hoc staff, the production of sensitive and non-sensitive materials will increase for that reason. So we approached the National Assembly and specifically requested for some extension of time between the conclusion of primaries by political parties and the conduct of subsequent election activities leading to election day. And the National Assembly granted 180 days, which is 6 months.
So they are very generous with the days.
Even though we asked for 1 year, but they are generous enough to give us 6 months. So that's why it looks very long now. Parties have concluded their primaries, have submitted the names of candidates for the election. We have published the final list of candidates for national elections as required by law. For the Presidential and National Assembly, we have over 4,200 candidates. We're in the process of concluding the final list of candidates for the state elections, which is going to be much longer and much bigger than the national election.
But don't you think that this makes it very costly to the nation, because, you know, elections by their very nature distract from other matters?
No, I think it's good. As our democracy matures, we'll become used to certainty. What you have just said reminded me of the period before the 2019 general election, when, in order to engender certainty into our electoral calendar, the Commission decided that going forward, our elections will hold on the third Saturday of the month of February of the election year. And for that reason, we released the timetable 1 year to the election. And people said, oh, it will distract the nation. Why should you do so? It's going to overheat the polity. But it's now accepted, it's known, and it's the practice in many countries. Every Ghanaian knows that December 5th of the election year is election day, irrespective of the day of the week. In Kenya, they all know that elections will hold on the second Tuesday of the month of August of the election year. And in other countries, the dates are fixed. In the US, for instance, it is on the first Tuesday of the month of November of the election year, unless it happens to be the first day of the month.
But does any of this in any way improve the quality of the democracy? Because you find that there are pockets of despondency now. People are beginning to say, hang on, are we getting value for all the investments we've made in transiting to democracy? Because you feel that the same old issues are there. Corruption is there. So much money is sucked up by the public service and very little trickles down to do the necessary things for everybody.
Well, you talked about democracy, which is much bigger than just elections.
Yes.
My responsibility is to conduct elections. And as you can see, there has been progressive improvement on the conduct and management of elections. It is clear now with every election, the process is getting better and more participatory. So as far as the Commission is concerned, we have seen tremendous improvement. No one can say that the way elections were conducted in 1998, 1999 is the same way that elections are conducted today, and will keep improving. But there may be other issues that are beyond the Electoral Commission. But as far as we are concerned, I think there has been progressive improvement, and Nigerians acknowledge that there has been progress.
Let's come then to issues within your purview. Campaign funding. I understand that you have put a limit, is it 5 billion for certain candidates, maybe the presidential? Is that realistic?
No, the limits are in the law actually. Remember, it wasn't 5 billion under the old law. It's the new Electoral Act that set the limit for 5 billion for presidential. And then it sets other limits for other elections, from governorship down to councillorship in the FCT. The FCT is the only part of the country where INEC conducts local government elections. So these are in the law, and they must be obeyed and respected. There are also limits for what individuals can contribute to campaign finance. Individuals can make contributions subject to a certain limit, and the party also has its own limitations as to what it can spend, including where the money is coming from and the responsibility for full disclosure for transparency.
I have seen pushbacks, especially regarding Nigerians who are based abroad, who want to contribute and who say they are being prevented by the law.
In terms of what? In terms of participation?
Participation. In terms of campaigning, in terms of funding. Because the law says money, something coming from abroad.
Well, the law is the law. The law says that parties cannot receive financial contributions from outside the country.
From anybody?
From anybody.
Whether it's a Nigerian that is based in the US, in the UK, or
that's
anywhere.
Correct. And if there is any money received by any party from outside the country, such funds must be transferred to the Commission. So in other words,
so it stands
foreign
to make
campaign
some
finance.
Well, somebody mistakenly said
if that is the case. But there is another dimension to the foreign issue you have raised. At present, Nigerians only vote in Nigeria because the law says that you only vote where you are registered. And we don't have registration centers or polling units outside Nigeria. So there has been advocacy by Nigerians living in the diaspora to be given the right to vote, as is the case in many other countries, even in West Africa. Again, is the law. The law says that voting is only allowed for those who are registered and domiciled in Nigeria, not outside the country. So there's been a lot of advocacy for Nigerians resident outside the country to be allowed to vote. We have also championed that cause. The Commission supports Nigerians living outside the country to vote, and they're in two categories.
Right.
You have Nigerians resident outside Nigeria, and that is the category called the Diaspora Nigerians.
Right.
But you have another category of out-of-country Nigerians who may be in the foreign service, or they're doing military service overseas, or they're members of the technical corps. They don't vote, as well as those who are permanently resident outside the country. But as soon as the law permits that we should register them outside the country, we'll work out the modalities for registration and the modalities for voting.
You are talking about registration, which you just completed some month ago, of new voters. And it's in the month of October that they are supposed to begin to collect their cards. What is it about these numbers that I've seen over 1 million that you found to be like maybe fraudulently registered?
Okay, the first point to make is that these cards will be available for collection by citizens. We hope by the end of October or early November. We have said so consistently, and we are working towards that. Quite a number of the cards for new registrants have already been printed.
And how do you intend to get them to people? Because there was a big fiasco regarding registration because you had limited centers and people were trooping and they were getting frustrated at those centers. Well, is the same thing you use on distributing this?
We must admit that the numbers that turned out to register was overwhelming. What every agency like INEC does is to rely on its institutional memory of what happened. The Commission registered over 14 million Nigerians before the 2019 general election. And we had 1,446 centers. So our projection for 2023 is that more Nigerians will register. And therefore we increase the number of centers to 2,672 or so. But even so, towards the end, there was a big surge. But the registration did not take place over a period of 1 month or a few weeks. It took place over a period of 1 year, from 28th June 2021, initially to the end of June 2022, but we extended it to the end of July 2022. So we made ample provision, including for the first time, introducing online pre-registration for those who have access to smartphones and internet and computers. But we appreciate the fact that not all Nigerians have access to these facilities. So in addition to the online pre-registration opportunity, we also have the physical or walk-in registration centers, including roving or rotational centers. But towards the end, there was a big surge of Nigerians interested in registering. Now, regarding the 1 million that we announced as invalid registration, the Commission, after every registration, cleans up the data. In cleaning up the data, we remove those who are not eligible to be registered under the law, those who are below the age of 18, or those who are not Nigerians, or those who have registered before. Nigerians are not allowed to register more than once. So those who are engaged in multiple registration, we removed their data.
Right.
So that is what we did. But that only covered the period from the 28th of June 2021 to 14th January 2022. Right now, we are cleaning up the data of new registrants from 15th January 2022 to 31st July, when the exercise was suspended until after the general election.
So you could well have another big number of...
Oh, most definitely we're going to have another
unqualified,
big number. Not yet completed,
right.
But definitely there's going to be another number to be added to the 1.1 million that we already cleaned up. But the law requires also that once we do so, we should also throw the register open to Nigerians for claims and objections by citizens. And the law specifically requires the Commission to publish the hard copies of the register in all the 8,809 wards nationwide.
Quite a tedious.
As well as 774 local government areas. Now the idea is for citizens to help INEC to further clean up the register. So there will be two stages. We're about to complete the cleaning up of new registrants. We'll add the data of fresh registrants that are eligible or valid to the existing register of 84 million, and then publish the entire register nationwide for citizens to help us clean it up further.
But let me take you still back to the collection. How easy are you going to make it? Because you have a short window from November to maybe January for people to collect. Now, so how easy is it going to be?
You know, the registration process keeps improving. We didn't have online pre-registration before. We now have online.
But we are on the collection. How easy?
It's on the collection.
Yes.
We also have those who registered physically, providing the commission with their mobile telephone numbers, or in some cases, email addresses. So one of the things we are going to do is to actually contact registrants, those who have provided their mobile phone numbers and email addresses of the locations where these cards can be collected. That's right. Number two, we're also going to open a portal where those who can click the portal can locate where the PVCs are for collection. But thirdly, and most importantly, in addition to all these processes, is the physical contact with the registrants to ensure that the cards are collected when available. And already some civil society organizations have expressed interest to partner with the commission to make the delivery of the cards to locations easier. We're operating on the principle of collection rather than distribution. If we distribute, it means that some people may collect by proxy on behalf of others. And from experience, these cards don't end up in the right hands. But
very valid.
The onus is now on the registered voter to actually go and collect his or her cards, and will warehouse the uncollected cards. So in other words, the cards will not be in the wrong hands.
Thank you very much. I think on that note, we'll go for a short break and resume the discussion. Welcome back. It is 30 Minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television. Our guest today is the chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu. We are discussing about the pre-election things just before the break, and I wonder, have you got all the money you need for the actual election now? Because funds in the past were a sticking point.
That's true. And learning from the experience of what happened in the past, we approached the National Assembly to provide a timeline by which funds should be appropriated and as much as possible released to the Commission before elections. And one of the progressive provisions of the 2022 Electoral Act is exactly that, that funds should be released to the Commission at least a year to the election. So we submitted a budget that every Nigerian knows, 305 billion for the election, which has been appropriated and a substantial part of it released. And that's why when you came, you said you were looking at me without all the telltale signs of anxiety.
And stress.
That is because forward planning has been what we have been doing. A substantial part of the non-sensitive materials have already been contracted, and some have started delivering. So we're not going through the kind of tension that we went through in previous elections. So yes, in terms of disbursement of funds, not all the funds have been released to the Commission yet, but even if all the funds are released today, some of the funds will not be needed until next year. For instance, we won't pay for logistics for movement of personnel to locations until next year. We wouldn't pay for personnel allowances until next year. But we are comfortable where we are at the moment.
What you have is enough if you just wouldn't get any additional money to conduct the election.
No, one cannot say so because one doesn't know what tomorrow will bring up. But at the moment, we are comfortable where we are. We don't know about what will happen tomorrow.
What about the foreign support that you normally get from the EU, from the other donors that support INEC for conducting elections?
Now, the donors support the Commission in scaling up some of our activities. But there are two things here. You have the core electoral activities and the core costs for conducting elections, the sensitive materials, the voter registration and things like that. These are the responsibilities of the sovereign, the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Right.
INEC will not receive any money from any donor on the sovereign electoral activities. ICT, for instance, will not accept. But they have been very helpful, the development partners, in scaling up, for instance, capacity building, or some of the publications that the Commission engages in, or inclusivity activities, or voter education and publicity. We welcome that. But as a matter of policy, the Commission doesn't accept money from the development partners. What we do is to discuss with them, develop a concept note. If it is consistent with what they can fund, then they fund the activities and account their donors. So in other words, they don't give us cash directly.
Right.
And in some cases, we also augment because they don't have all the resources to meet all the requirements of the Commission.
You spoke of ICT, and it is one hot button, hacking. How hack-proof is INEC? Your ICT infrastructure, because it's going to feature, and even big countries like US and others, this is a matter of concern. So how prepared are you?
Any organization that operates an online platform is susceptible to hacking, but our defense system is very, very robust. But I'm sure you don't expect me on national and international television to say exactly how we are going to defend our systems, because those who are potential hackers, whether ethical or unethical, are also watching this program. But we are satisfied that our defenses are robust.
So we are not likely to hear as an excuse from INEC that hackers have done this or that, because you are well prepared.
No, we are, as far as INEC is concerned, as far as what we can do is concerned, we are satisfied with the mechanisms that we have put in place to defend our internet assets.
What about the issue of where you keep the physical stuff that you are going to have, all the papers and what have you? Because in the last few months there was controversy about whether INEC is no more confident in keeping its material with the Central Bank of Nigeria because of the partisanship of the governor. That's his then intention, or what looked like he was going to be an aspirant in the election.
Okay, let me make this important clarification. The Commission has facilities nationwide, including zonal stores for the storage of critical election materials.
But they are not as secure as central banks where currency notes are kept.
There are two dimensions to
yes.
You have the sensitive materials. Basically, you're talking about the result sheets and the ballot papers. But for us, there are other categories of materials considered sensitive. Our ballot boxes, our voting cubicles, the beavers, for instance. And all these are in the custody of the Commission itself. They are not in the custody of any other organization. Coming back specifically to the issue of the central bank, it hasn't been an issue of security of the facilities. Since the Commission started this partnership with the central bank, we never had any breach or failure. We never had. But for the reason that we mentioned before, the Ekiti and Osun governorship elections, we handle these activities directly. But next week in Lagos, we are going to hold a meeting with logisticians. It's a traditional thing that we do at the beginning, just on the eve of elections. But we are going to discuss with them, including the armed services, the labor unions, the Chartered Institute of Transport and Logistics, the Central Bank of Nigeria, and many others, including banks and companies, on management of electoral logistics. And I hope at the end of that meeting, we will now make a further clarification. But our collaboration with the Central Bank has been a happy experience.
But it's after this exchanges, this engagement, that you will decide whether you won't be keeping anything with the central bank this time around.
It's after the engagement.
Right, right. And what about the issue of the visas, the experience you've had with it and all of that? Are you confident that when all over the country it is being used, you are not going to have a big crisis?
Now, when we had issues in the first major deployment of the visas in the Anambra governorship election, and we had a few challenges, not just technological or technical challenges. We also had issues with transportation because of the security environment under which the election was conducted. We also had challenges with some of the ad hoc staff that withdrew at the 11th hour, so we had to replace them. So we learned lessons from Anambra. You know, there were 2 elections in Anambra in November. Anambra won the main election in majority of the local governments except Ihiala. When we conducted Ihiala a few days after the first election, there were no issues. We never had any problem with the beavers. Yes, we had challenges in the FCT, but we reviewed our processes. And you can see that in the cases of Ekiti and Osun, we had no issues with the beavers. So I can confidently say that we have found a way to address the challenges associated with the initial deployment of the beavers in elections. But to give citizens more confidence and also to assure us that we are ready for a national election, we are going to do a mock accreditation using the beavers in selected states nationwide ahead of the general election. So in other words, we are not just deploying hundreds of, about 200,000 beavers for the election in 2023 without doing that mock test. So we are at present satisfied that we have done everything that we are supposed to do to ensure that we achieve maximum or optimal functionality of the beavers machines.
In a few seconds, can you tell me how the electronic transmission of result is going to work before we go to the issue of insecurity?
Now, the issue of electronic transmission of result is going to be consistent with the provision of the law. At present, what we do is to transmit polling unit level results by uploading the result sheets, the EC8A, copies of which are given to polling agents and the police by law at the polling unit level. We upload these onto the IRF portal. We started this in Nasarawa in August 2020 when we had a by-election in a small state constituency. Right. Since then, we have deployed the IRF portal in 105 off-season elections.
And it can cope when it is national elections.
Fantastic. In fact, in the case of Ekiti and Osun, if I write from Anambra, the speed with which we were able to upload the results from all nooks and crannies of the state has been appreciated by citizens.
The hot button of insecurity, how are you going to deal with it in the election? I mean, there are all sorts of places from Katsina, Zamfara, parts of Niger, Nasarawa, Kebbi, Sokoto, and then down to a large chunk of eastern Nigeria.
Well, I must say that it's a challenge, but there is no challenge without a solution. Our responsibility is to conduct elections. It is the responsibility of other agencies of government to secure the environment for us to conduct elections. And we have been working very closely with the security agencies. Yes, the situation now is different from what it was in 2015 and 2019.
Professor Mahmood Yakubu, thank you very much for being on 30 Minutes.
Thank you. God bless you.
Viewers, we've come to the end of this edition of 30 Minutes. Keep a date with us.